And we're back with our panel. Joining us today, Wall Street Journal columnist Kim Strassel. Ben Domenech is publisher of The Federalist. Ezra Klein is the editor of Vox.com. And Ed O'Keefe covers politics for The Washington Post. Kim, I want to start with you. Finally, some voting is going to happen.
Finally.
What are we going to learn?
So I think the million-dollar question, or maybe you should say the billion-dollar question because it's Donald Trump, is what Major was talking about. Does he have an operation out there? Are the people who are lining up for 5 hours to get tickets, are they devoted celebrity watchers or are they devoted caucus goers? And I think it's particularly interesting because we had some numbers out this week where people were asked, has a campaign contacted you, and who were you contacted by? A lot of people said that they've been contacted by the Cruz campaign, even by the Bush campaign, by the Rubio campaign. Not so many people said that Trump had reached out to them.
They're all reaching out to him, though.
Yeah, they are.
Ezra, what do you make of? What are you looking for out of Iowa?
I'm actually watching Rubio. So I think that we know that it's going to be Trump or Cruz running through what people are now calling the conservative lane. I think we're not exactly sure what's going to happen with the more establishment Republicans. I think for a long time now the conventional wisdom has been that at some point Rubio is going to break out of the pack. And so now there's this feeling that he's surging a little bit at the end in Iowa, that as it was said before, maybe gets up to 17, 18%. If you get a very strong third in Iowa and go into New Hampshire, then you could begin to see the establishment coalesce around him, a big infusion of money into his campaign, a lot of work on behalf of Republicans who are afraid of Cruz or Trump around him. If not, then you're going to have the same dynamic you've had for some time now, where you've got Rubio, Christie, Bush, and Anut Kasich, and potentially a couple of others all fighting for the same lane in the primary, and no real ability for the establishment to unite.
But Rubio's problem there is that Donald Trump actually has the most support among moderate and mainstream Republicans. The support isn't actually coming from the conservative wing of the party. It's coming more from the mainstream, which is a real challenge for him. I feel like the lesson that we're going to learn over the course of the next couple of weeks, not just from Iowa, is Donald Trump's historical analog more something like Pat Buchanan, who won 4 out of the first 6 contests in 1996? Or is this a situation that's a little bit more like the 19th century and the Bourbon Democrats, who backed the gold standard and free trade and would be writing with Kim at the Wall Street Journal today, and then saw William Jennings Bryan come along and take over their party with a speech, which is something that should, I think, make the establishment and those in the mainstream and the elites of the party very afraid.
Because William Jennings Bryan had a terrible presidential success record.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I mean, the other thing, though, here, too, is you talk to any of the candidates out there, the other candidates other than Donald Trump, they are eager for a one-on-one match with Donald Trump.
Yeah, they sure are, because they keep splitting the vote.
Right. They really do think he's beatable. I mean, and I think this goes to Ben's point, is that he seems to have a ceiling on his support. He is getting moderate Republicans, but there's a limit to the number he gets.
Ed, you've been spending a lot of time with the non-Trump and Cruz candidates in New Hampshire.
It's lonely and quiet.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit, because they need to find their moment, or it may pass them.
That's why none of them will be, with the exception of Rubio, will be in Iowa tomorrow night. Kasich has been in New Hampshire all weekend. Chris Christie and Jeb Bush get to New Hampshire tomorrow. Those 3 guys certainly see New Hampshire really as their last stand. Bush, to some extent, has operations in the other states and probably has the money to keep going. But the other 2, certainly, if they cannot finish well in New Hampshire, they go home. They're done. And so I think, back to Ezra's point, if Rubio has a very good night in Iowa on Monday, I think the clamoring for consolidation, for getting out, for telling that Jeb Bush super PAC stop hitting Rubio and focus more on consolidating behind 1 or 2 of these guys will really step up. I mean, we've seen a lot of that in the last few weeks. There's been calls for the Jeb Bush PAC to back off. Their argument is it's working because it's keeping Rubio down. It's keeping him down in Iowa. It's keeping him down in New Hampshire as Jeb Bush starts to creep up with about 10 days to go.
Ezra, what do you make of, Ann Selzer mentioned that of those voters who think the system is rigged, Donald Trump, the wealthiest person running, is getting the most of that vote on the Republican side? Why do you think that is?
I think this is genuinely core to his appeal. So if you watched Trump's counter rally, as I did for my sins, he had this great line in the middle of it. And you can go back and look at the transcript and find it. And he says, I am really greedy. I am a really greedy person. I've been greedy all my life, and now I want to be greedy on behalf of America. And there's something perfect in its encapsulation of his appeal, because if you think what's going on is the economy's become unfair, if you're struggling, if you're economically struggling, and you think what's been happening is rich guys like Trump are kind of screwing you over and have been for some time now. And now here comes one of those rich guys with all those powers and all that capacity to rig the economy in their favor, and he's promising to rig it in your favor. That, I think, it's a kind of stunning indictment of people's belief about what's going on in the economy right now, right? That they think that what they need is someone to rig it in their favor. But two, I think it's very, very significant as part of his appeal. And it's an appeal he understands about himself, which is one reason he's such a strong candidate.
Having been there myself, I was in the rafters, and what was stunning is talking to veterans who were at the event beforehand. I said, isn't he taking advantage of you guys? And he said, they all do. Every politician takes advantage of veterans. But this guy's actually putting money behind it. And all these other guys, when we asked them to spend money in Washington on our behalf to help the VA hospitals and whatnot, they drag their feet, they don't do it. This guy's going to raise money. And if you look, $6 million he says raised, most of it from his friends in New York and Las Vegas that night. But there are 22 organizations across the country who are going to get this money, apparently. They're very small. They're in Iowa. They're in Massachusetts. They're all over. I mean, he can say to them, I took advantage of my power, doled out the money, and helped you.
And this is core to his appeal in the sense that he's a traitor to his class, which really is something that we've seen in politics before and is enormously powerful.
It's a good bumper sticker. It's Donald Trump. Traitor.
Exactly. And that makes him very effective. It makes him very powerful. But it's also a sign of a situation where the Republican Party has failed to address the fact that they are out of step with a significant portion of the voting electorate when it comes to the issues of immigration, when it comes to the issues of foreign policy, and when it comes to these issues, to these core sort of the economy is rigged in a way that does not benefit us. Now a man comes along who promises to rig it in your favor, and it's a message that's connecting with those voters.
Kim, what's your feeling about Ted Cruz? If he doesn't win Iowa, is that a fatal blow for him? Where's his place in this?
I think the stakes for both Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are incredibly high because they have staked so much on Iowa. And Ted Cruz in particular, his entire message has been geared toward saying, I am the most conservative person in the race, and he's tailored it very specifically to the grassroots activists there and to the Tea Parties and to the evangelicals. So if you can't win Iowa, where do you win? And that's going to be the big blow to him if he doesn't come out on top going into New Hampshire. And no one wants to go into New Hampshire with negative momentum.
Yeah.
So to that point, though, I think it's an interesting question about Trump. You were asking him a variant of this, but his entire campaign is based on this idea that he's a winner. He brags about it on the stump. Everything is about his high poll numbers, how he's doing well around everyone. And of something I'm really fascinated to watch with him, if he loses an early primary like Iowa, does it collapse in on itself? Does the fact that he is manifestly now not a winner, that he got beaten by Ted Cruz, how much does that actually hurt the very fundamentals of his appeal? And also, how does he react to that? Because you can react very badly to a loss.
He does not like to lose.
No, in the ways that make the next loss much more likely.
That may be a fact too hard to get around. Ben, quickly on the fight over immigration between Cruz and Rubio during the debate and afterwards. Does that illuminate anything about the immigration in the Republican Party, or is it just two guys fighting?
I think it's just two guys fighting, and I'm not sure that really either of them got hurt that much or benefited that much from their responses to those questions in the debate. I think the problem that has really dogged Marco Rubio throughout this race is that the last thing that Republican voters know about him is that he supported the Gang of Eight bill. And I think that that's something that's fundamental and sort of easy to explain in a way that Cruz's flip-flop on this sort of amendment issue is not as easy to explain. The question is whether that's so big of a drag that Rubio can't get momentum coming out of Iowa in southern states and in sort of future contests. And that's something that I think we're going to find out over the next couple of years.
Very quick, it is a long-term problem to have the two Cuban-American Republican senators continue to fight about immigration. Hispanics are listening, Democrats are listening. If one of them emerges, it'll be a huge problem for them.
And we'll hope you'll all be listening as we take a break right now. Stay with us for more of our panel. And we're back with our panel. Ezra, I want to start with you on the Democratic side. Some people who supported Hillary Clinton said they really wanted her to have a challenge in the primaries. Well, she got one. So where do things stand in Iowa? What are you looking for there?
So what's fascinating in Iowa is that there's a replay in a way of an argument that happened in 08 too, which was that Hillary Clinton is much more of a political realist than most people who run for president. Barack Obama that year ran promising hope. He promised change. He promised that there was a way to change and transform the political system such it would be friendly to progressive priorities. He won that argument with Hillary Clinton then. There was a period of time in the interim when liberals were so disappointed by Obama's frustrations with Republicans, and people thought Clinton's argument that this was going to be a fight, that Democrats needed a fight or there'd be trench warfare, had gotten a lot more traction among liberals. And what Sanders is showing is that to some degree that's not true. He's come in with this argument of a political revolution. There's going to be a way to sort of mobilize the working class, mobilize a kind of silent progressive majority, and sweep away a lot of the obstructions in American politics. And I think the thing Clinton is having trouble figuring out is how to sell a more realistic but also more depressing vision of American politics. How do you respond to that by saying, that's not realistic, but I don't have an answer that's going to make you happy either?
Right.
One of the most interesting things that's happened, I feel like, over the course of the past couple of years is that it became okay to be a democratic socialist in America, in the sense that this was not something, Bernie Sanders, when he was in the House of Representatives, was someone who was on the extremes. He was understood as being on the extremes, and yet something has changed in America, and it's changed in large part because of the rise of a young group of Americans who have no association, no memory of the Cold War. They do not associate socialism with communism or the Soviet Union or anything of that nature. There was an interesting poll that came out a few months ago that asked under 30-year-olds if they, who they would be okay voting for. 69% of people under 30, this is Gallup, said that they would be okay voting for a socialist for the presidency, compared to 75% who said they'd be okay voting for an evangelical Christian. That's a dramatic shift compared to previous generations, and that's the kind of support that Bernie is tapping into.
So, Kim, if Hillary Clinton wins in Iowa and New Hampshire, does that mean the Democrats are making a sensible choice about what it takes to govern and being practical?
They're probably making a pragmatic choice about a nominee that would have a better chance of beating a Republican. I mean, I think everyone probably agrees with this, that there is a lot of enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders. And when you have some of these head-to-head matchups with Republicans, he does do fairly well against some of them. But I think maybe when his positions are better known in the country, is the country really ready to go there? Possibly not. And that's probably on the minds of a lot of Democrats who are going out to vote.
And what do you think? Let's play through some scenarios here. One, Iowa and New Hampshire have a lot more liberals than any of the other contests. So let's imagine Bernie Sanders rides this wave of enthusiasm, wins in those two places. How much damage does that do to Hillary Clinton?
Well, he certainly has momentum at his back. He's probably raised a little more money, and people in South Carolina, Nevada, and those other states in March start looking a little more seriously at Sanders. He then has, of course, all that money to start spending and organizing and deploy his people in Iowa and New Hampshire into those places. But the coalitions or the demographics of those other states change dramatically. We've talked about this before, that Iowa, New Hampshire, and Vermont are the most liberal states in the country. Everywhere else is not nearly as liberal. And while a lot of those 30-year-olds or under 30-year-olds will live in these other places, there are going to be a lot of Democrats who are much more pragmatic, understand that having Sanders as the nominee would not work, and probably will swing back towards Clinton, but it would prolong the race. That's why you saw this conversation this week about debates all the way into May. I mean, the fact that they're even talking about that suggests that if he does pull off wins in both early states, this could go on for quite a while.
It is worth noting, I think, that one thing Hillary Clinton's team has done that they did not do in 2008 is they've always been prepared, even with not that much evident opposition, for a very long race.
Yes.
They felt they lost the 2008 race because they did not prepare for a delegate fight in smaller caucus states, and they just did not have a strategy that was ready for it to go through June, and they do this time.
That's right.
Her other problem, though, here, and we haven't talked about it, is not just the enthusiasm problem, but the email problem
Yes.
and the trust thing. I mean, look, Bernie Sanders is going into Iowa and his closing argument is, let's make the world a better place. And Hillary Clinton is going into Iowa and her closing argument is, we're pretty confident there might not be an indictment. I mean, that's just not a great place to be. Right, so she's got this and it plays into the trust question, and that does resonate in particular with a lot of these younger people that you're talking to as well.
It also is the other side of the coin when it comes to the economic game being rigged. Hillary Clinton is not the kind of person who has the message of saying, if you believe the economy is rigged against you, if you're a disaffected voter, if you feel like you're frustrated with the situation, with bailouts, with Wall Street, with everything of that nature, she's not someone who's going to upset the apple cart. Both Trump and Sanders tap into that rage that is out there in the country that feels like they've been ignored by both parties, and they feel that way, frankly, because they have.
Ezra, what do you think if Hillary Clinton does well? It doesn't seem there's the kind of animus. Remember, the Clinton and Obama voters really didn't like each other for a period of time in 2008. Does it feel like that at all in terms of the Sanders voters and the Clinton voters? That's the first question. The second is, what does she do if she does do well? She might have a period of time where things are going well for her while the Republicans are still fighting things out.
So I think, one, there's not going to be deep divisions in the party. And it's worth saying that even in 2008, while there was a lot of talk of Pumas at the election and that there'd be these big splits, there didn't end up being that. People always underestimate how much having a nominee in the other party ends up concentrating a Democrat or Republican's mind. In terms of what they do, though, in a very long period where all the attention is going to a Republican campaign that's going for month after month, They probably raise a lot of money and they do a lot of organizing. But that may not be a good period for Clinton because it's a period in which she gets covered as a president when he gets investigated.
Right. All right, we're going to have to end it there. Thanks to all of you. We'll be right back in a moment. That's it for us today. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern to our digital network, CBSN, for our live coverage of the results from Iowa. Until next week, for Face the Nation, I'm John Dickerson.